Can you hear that? That's the sound of the amount of X-Men movies being made right now.
Oh, and when are we getting the X-Men?
I cannot tell you that.
The X-Men, Marvel's merry band of mutants, a superhero team that acted alongside Spider-Man as the 1-2 punch that kicked off the superhero craziness we now have today. Yeah, alright, back to the X-Men. Once they dominated the pop culture zeitgeist.
I doubt that.
The fuck? Shut up, Gene. Whether it be in comics and animation in the 90s or in blockbuster movies, there's definitely a place, an audience out there for the X-Men. However, since the Fox-Disney merger, we haven't really heard anything.
There's something different in your genes, like a mutation.
Now, I'm sure Kevin is waiting for the perfect moment to pull the trigger on the X-Men, first getting his multiversal saga out of the way and focusing on establishing the Fantastic Four. However, when it comes time to bring the X-Men to the MCU, I want it to be done right. Well, one would ask, what would that look like? What does a good X-Men movie look like? Well, I think in order to figure out what makes a good X-Men movie, we first have to look at how to make a bad one. Where has the franchise gone wrong? What could be tweaked to give us something more in line with how these characters should be portrayed? Well, today we'll be doing just that as I go through where we've walked before, as I take a look at the history of the X-Men in cinema. So join me as we discuss how to make a bad X-Men movie. Now, let me outline the goal of this video. Numero uno, the whole point of this is for you to walk away with such a vivid understanding of these characters, how and who they are, that you'll be yearning for the X-Men to be done right. I want you to have a deep understanding of their characterization, the themes, the team's dynamic, the iconography. I want you to love these characters as much as I do. With that being said, I think it's fair that we turn to the movies. The X-Men movies, for the most part, no, not you or you, have been pretty good. Great action, compelling characters, a tight story that navigates themes of prejudice in a smart way, never becoming overbearing that it takes away from the story. That being said, the X-Men inherently are a socially charged group. They always have been. This theme of prejudice is best explored in First Class, but it is equally done well across the original trilogy, a pervading fear that humanity feels towards the mutants.
Have you tried not being a mutant?
So, when asking the question, what is the X-Men? How do they separate themselves from other superhero teams? Well, they're not tied together by family or duty, but by DNA.
They're kind of a very specific tribe. I mean, every book has, like, the Fantastic Four as a family. The Avengers seem more like random guys that got together to fight Loki. The X-Men had their mutant hood as their unifying factor.
Being a mutant, being an X-Men is in their blood. They're not just a superhero team, but the X-Men, and at large, mutants, are a race. Now, that metaphor for racial prejudice has always been there, and as the years evolved, so did the message, to involve anyone who feels ostracized, alone, or different. To me, this is what the X-Men movies did best. Characters felt alone, sometimes even amongst other mutants. However, as much as these movies got right, they also missed the mark on a lot. Some may point to the suits as a very obvious example.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
But Mitch, they're just super suits. Who cares that they're all black? Well, to me, that's completely missing the point. The X-Men are a team, yes, and teams generally have uniforms. However, like I just said, a core theme is prejudice, feeling weird or different for standing out. What Professor X instills in his pupils is to embrace that difference and use it for good, to be proud, to show pride in what makes you different, unique. This is why all the X-Men suits are different colors, styles, or designs. It's a manifestation of the character's self-expression. Each pattern is distinctly them. If I showed you any costume, you could tell me what character that is in an instant. But can you tell me whose uniform this is? See what I mean? Now, there's a ton of smaller things these movies could have done better. Managing a whack timeline would have been great for starters. Others might say little things like misunderstanding Scott's optic blast. The fuck? They're not laser beams. They're meant to be concussive, like a punch, not hot. Sorry, anyway, to my point, I think the biggest and most glaring issue about the X-Men movies is in relation to characterization and the team's dynamic. All these superficial little problems aside, this is what really matters. I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but the X-Men is not Wolverine and Friends, or Mystique and Friends for that matter. Look, I love Wolverine and the X-Men. It's a really layered story with some great characters, but that too suffers from the same problem. When Bryan Singer made X2, he completely intended for that to be a movie that leans on Logan's shoulders a little more than the first. He had every intention to put that focus on Cyclops in X3, but as we know, he left to go make Superman Returns, and so did Cyclops too, being made a cuck in that movie as well. Naturally, as events played out, Wolverine was the fan favourite, the most bankable star, and this led to the third movie being centred around him instead of Scott. So egregiously, I might add, that Scott was killed off-screen. Off-screen? Are you fucking kidding me? The fuck? Anyways, from here we would get subsequent Logan-focused movies over the next 10 or so years, and now the general public thinks that Logan is the centerpiece of the X-Men. Now, no disrespect to Wolverine, great character. However, this throws off the dynamic of the X-Men. Logan shouldn't be the leader of the X-Men, not even a secondary leader, that usually goes to Storm. The real leader of the X-Men, the one born for this role, Xavier's first pupil and arguably the most mishandled superhero in cinema, is Cyclops. Now, I'll come back to Cyclops shortly, but I think this is where a lot of the X-Men movies fall short. It's characterization. Very few of the X-Men were given a fair shake, done right. We never got to see the best of these characters, see them accurately depicted on screen. Anyone else just realize Warpath is just a dude with a knife? Like, chill out, you have a knife, big whoop. I think some standouts might be Kelsey Grammer's Beast. To me, that's pretty on point. Magneto, of course, is great. Hugh Jackman does a great Wolverine. Mystique is pretty good as well, the Rebecca Romijn version. No, not you, Jennifer. It's literally Jennifer Lawrence in blue makeup. She's not even trying, man. Nightcrawler was fantastic, and that's pretty much it in regards to these characters accurately being depicted on screen. You might be thinking, well, what about Charles? Well, yes, you could make an amazing argument for him. I think largely they got the character right. A dreamer, someone wise, kind, nurturing, someone who brings out the best in people, who just wants to help. However, I think he was too good in some cases. For those unaware, Charles can be quite selfish in his pursuits. He sweeps things under the rug, lies to his pupils if it aids his goals. He thinks he's always right, and he will help people even if they don't want that help. He gets into arguments and has a massive bias against Magneto. My point is that the comics made Xavier a real character. He's more fallible and real. This is something I really liked about McAvoy's Xavier, feeling more in line with the Charles that I recognize. Less of a kind old man and more of a fallible do-gooder. Other characters like Iceman and Colossus were just fine. They didn't really do anything that made me go, yeah, that's Iceman, awesome, or yeah, that's totally Colossus. To me, Colossus is a massive Russian dude, like 7 feet, easy, red and yellow costume, military kind of haircut with a thick Russian accent and a heart of gold.
Oh, this is not so good.
Bobby is young, he's fun, he's the one to get all these serious types out of their funk. He's a breath of fresh air in a group so downtrodden by a world that rejects them, or villains that want to have their heads. What I'm trying to say is I never felt like these were the characters I knew. Kitty was okay, I guess. Storm didn't really resemble the African queen we've been given in the comics. No sense of authority in her tone, no sense of leadership, no grace, no heart, just a really underserved character. But at least that doesn't compare to what they did with Rogue. Rogue to me is the perfect example of Fox not understanding the X-Men distilled down into a single character. Not just not understanding the character, but not understanding the themes that these characters represent. In the comics, Rogue is a southern loud and proud girl who doesn't take any shit. She's expressive and is unapologetically herself. Now this contrasts against her power set that may at times make her feel alone. This contrasting dichotomy makes both aspects of her character so fascinating, almost as if the loud and proud personality is hiding a woman underneath that fears intimacy and real connection. In the movies, however, she's a mouse through and through. Now, there is a nice journey lying there that correlates with the before-mentioned pride, acceptance, and self-expression themes so important to the X-Men, seeing Rogue discover a sense of pride in her gifts. However, her story is in fact quite the opposite. She gets rid of her powers, doesn't accept herself for who she is, and the audience is meant to get behind that? I'm sorry, what? That totally goes against the entire message, the entire point of the X-Men. Pride and acceptance for what makes you unique. Now, I've left out 2 X-Men so far, Jean Grey and Scott Summers. To me, those 2 are the core of the X-Men. They're Xavier's first students, and somehow in 1, 2, 11 movies or so, we've never told their story. Not really. Alright, listen, the X-Men don't work without these 2 characters. Xavier founded the school on the hope of helping mutants who could not control their abilities, and none make better examples than Jean and Scott. Scott's head injury meant his destructive capabilities were not within his control. As for Jean, well, she's Jean. An absolute powerhouse, it took an incredible amount of care and support to show that her powers were within her control. These 2 believe in Xavier's dream the most. Scott being the pragmatic one, making it a reality, and Jean being the idealist that leads with her empathy. Naturally, that empathy is what has made her so fascinated with a character like Logan, someone who is just pain all over. She can sense that, feel his pain. She feels an empathetic care, a duty to help heal his splintered mind. Sure, the movies leaned on this idea, but the dynamic was just all wrong. The point of view was from Logan's perspective. The movie frames you to want to see Logan steal Jean from Scott. This isn't helped by the movie completely butchering Scott's character, emasculating him with turtlenecks and cardigans, boy bands, and getting his ass handed to him. This just isn't Cyclops. Cyclops wouldn't be taken out like this. Now, I'm not going to repeat myself in regards to Cyc. If you want to see why Scott is the best X-Men, I'll leave this in the link below. But to make my point, Scott Summers is the fucking GOAT.
Psylocke, if you detect so much as an untoward thought, drive a psi-knife into his skull.
As you wish.
Something people don't know about Scott is that he's incredibly smart. It's what makes him such an unparalleled tactician and combatant. Rarely will he ever lose a hand-to-hand fight. He knows his opponent's moves inside and out, and when it comes to planning, Jesus, don't even get me started. This man may be the most prepared character in all of comics. He puts Batman's planning time motif to shame.
So plan B?
No, not Plan B. Plan 2. Plan B implies we only have 26.
He's got plans on plans. Every room he walks into, he's got a plan and a backup plan for every situation he encounters. He's constantly analyzing every person in the room. He doesn't get surprised. So, yeah, this scene where Cyclops is surprised and then loses a physical fight within 10 seconds is probably the most anti-Cyclops scene you could have made. Scott has a level of authority that is just unmatched in comics. He has Captain America level status. He's the type of guy to glance at you with a look and you know exactly what he wants out of you. The reason he has this level of respect and authority is due to his team's understanding for his leadership. Let me explain. It's an impossible task to make such a colourful group of characters fall in line, and yet, Scott does it. This respect means Scott can direct his team with such surgical precision, and they'll listen, because they know how hard it is to do his job.
Girls, scan the water. Find out if they're out there. How many, how far out? And we're going to need island-wide psi-links now.
Yes, Mr. Summers.
However, Scott isn't just a square leader. He has his edges, his interesting past, or his utilitarian approach to getting things done, often choosing what's best for mutants.
Rough 'em up, no berserker stuff, and bring one back to me. This is our town now, and I want to send a message.
He doesn't like to waste time. He gets straight to the point. He's okay with torture or going beyond the lines of morality if it means completing the mission. Scott, however, will always keep his humanity firmly in check, regardless of the weight of his leadership weighing on him. And that weight really does weigh on him.
You never taught me any of this stuff, Charles. You had a dream. I have a plan. And just the tiniest bit of faith that I'm not going to get us all killed.
Scott has to endure the front lines. He doesn't get to sit in a chair and talk about ideals like Xavier. He sees the reality of the world the same as Magneto.
Never again.
That being said, he fundamentally believes in Xavier's dream, the ideal. In that way, he has become the balance of these two opposing forces, and as the character has aged, has been able to become his own man, standing up to both of these men and earning their respect. Scott is the hardest character in the X-Men to do right. He's a guy with no discernible gimmicks or quirks that makes him easy to identify. He isn't swashbuckling, loud and proud, grizzled, or jovial. He's pretty square. Now that's a hard character to write, super easy to make stiff or boring. But beyond the archetype of being a strong leader is a man that hurts, that wrestles with feelings of inadequacy, wrestling with not having all the answers, wrestling with the burden of being leader, responsible for others' lives, and if we zoom out even further, wrestling with being the face of mutant kind as a whole. It's a character then like Jean Grey, someone who leads with empathy, someone caring that centers him. She becomes his lightning rod, someone that allows him to have a sense of play, passion, and joy.
All of the hardships you suffered, none of them mattered anymore. Jean took all the pain away.
Now, you could say the reverse is true for Jean, that Scott is her lightning rod. When Jean goes all Phoenix, who is it that brings her back to reality? Well, it's Scott. Time and time again, we've seen that these two are intrinsically linked.
I'm not losing you again!
However, I want to stay focused here. It isn't just a desire of mine to see these characters done right on the big screen. It's necessary for these characters to be done right in order for the X-Men to work as a team. Without these two, it all falls apart. Without Scott, the X-Men is just a bunch of loose cannons with no direction. Without Jean, the team loses its humanity, its empathetic, caring center. Now there's others that might fill those roles, others that can lead or be the team's beating heart, but none have the punch that they do. Turning back to the movies, you can now see how hard it is to process the Cyclops and Jean that we've been given. In no way is this the Phoenix, or this for that matter. In no way is this Scott Summers, but I digress. I'd rather just show you how Jean and Scott should be done than just tell you, but that video will come later. What we have to ask is a simple question. At its core, what are some of the key problems with the X-Men movies, and how could slight fixes improve them? I think one huge thing that pulls audiences out of these movies is the inconsistent vision across the X-Men movies. There was never a sense that Fox knew exactly what they wanted to do with the mutants. Multiple versions of multiple characters would appear across multiple timelines with little to no explanation, almost as if the X-Men saga had a just watch the last one and you'll kind of get it approach. And sometimes not even that made sense. What the? Didn't you have the Phoenix in the, never mind. Naturally, an easy fix to this is laying out a clear 10-year plan for the mutants. What aspects do you want to explore? How will the characters develop? What trials will they go through, and what themes will we develop? Another small, easy fix, but something that would make a huge impact, is just getting the suits right. Now, the original X-Men movie was a product of its time. Back then, the multicolored suits just wouldn't be taken seriously. Fair enough too, they're pretty full on. But now it's commonplace. So embrace it. Embrace the colour and have our heroes wear costumes that they're proud to wear. Ones that express their identity and further that theme of individuality and self-expression. Now, something that is a continuous theme across all the X-Men movies is the idea of the mutant menace. Themes of prejudice, fear in the unknown. It's a can of worms that has so much to unpack. However, whilst that makes sense for the first two movies or so, by the third we need to evolve past this theme. If mutants are a new phenomenon, sure, people are going to be in fear and they're going to hate because of that. But 6 movies in, that shit's going to get tired. For 20 years now, it's been the same thing in every movie. Mutant hate. However, I think it's time that we evolve the mutant story. Have them assimilate into society or create their own. Genosha. I would love to see a counterculture that mutants are starting to become popular, sort of like what we saw in Grant Morrison's X-Men. I want these characters to learn eventually that what makes them different isn't to be feared, but to be praised, that it's cool to be unique. What I'm trying to say is I want the theme of mutant hate to finally evolve. Lastly, the big thing for me, the motherlode, is the dynamic, the characterization of our heroes. I don't want to see one hero brought into the spotlight and everyone else pushed into the background. Yes, Cyclops, we see you in the back there. We need to give each of our heroes a hero moment where we show why they're valuable to the team. Storm and Iceman are both Omega level mutants, yet we've never seen that. Nice, Iceman, nice. You froze a cup, cool.
You can do a lot more than that.
I don't know, can you, Iceman? You just froze a cup. We need to see the ensemble nature of these teams. We need to see Wolverine learning to fall in line after butting heads with Cyc. We need to see that dynamic right.
Every now and then, Summers. I remember why you're still in charge.
This team should be balanced with interesting powers and opinions and personalities. The team should have discussions back and forths on ideology and approach, whilst all believing in Xavier's vision. This could be done with Beast, utilizing his philosophical understanding to explore some great ideas, kicking back on other characters, drawing the line in the sand on moral actions. My general point is that this team should feel like a team. They should provide a utility, a purpose, a unique angle that separates them and makes them feel valuable. In X3, Warren did the opposite of this. He kind of just existed, completely separate from the story, mind you. What's his personality? What's his worldview? What's his purpose in this narrative?
Who the fuck is that guy?
He kind of just dicked around the whole movie, cut off some chicken wings, jumped out of a window and then saved his dad. Like, yeah, nice bro. In the comics, he's helped fund some of the X-Men's adventures, helped pay for their expensive toys, using his dad's money.
Thank dear old dad, it's his money. Second thought, don't thank him. For some reason, he's under the impression this is just a regular prep school.
What a G. He also provides a unique perspective with his father being so closely tied to the Sentinel program and humanity's fear of mutants. What's my point? Well, everyone has a purpose, and we need to see that. When I first started making this video, I knew I didn't want to make this a play-by-play of every movie telling you which one's garbage and which ones get it right. That's super boring to me. I don't need to walk you through origins to tell you that those claw VFX look fucking horrendous. or that there's no emotional punch to Apocalypse's final fight, or even Dark Phoenix's for that matter. I don't need to tell you that The Last Stand is a spit in the face to everyone who loves the X-Men. You can understand that all for yourself. That being said, I can't just rinse these movies without acknowledging how good they were too. For a time, the X-Men dominated cinema. X3 at the time was the most expensive movie ever made. Largely, their commitment to good storytelling is why fans came back time and time again, whether it's personal stories like Logan or thrilling adventures like Days of Future Past. The X-Men movies worked. They really did. They were movies with thought-provoking themes under the guise of a blockbuster. They kicked off the superhero craze, and that can't be overstated. Now, that being said, what have we learned here? Well, I think we can clean up some easy fixes like the suits. I think we can evolve the characters and the themes with a clear vision. I think we can make this feel like a team and not Wolverine and friends. Also think we've learnt a lot about our X-Men. We know Bobby should be the jovial and exciting one, not a bore dicking around trying to find a girlfriend. We've learnt Jean is the empathetic center of the team, not a useless character designed to shout Scott's name. We've learnt that Cyclops is a focused leader, not a limp dick cuck designed to get in the way of Wolverine. We've learnt that Beast is our moral guide and the voice of reason amongst our heroes. That Angel has a real purpose on the team, not just existing to swoop in and save his dopey looking father at the end of a shitty movie. Yeah, I think there's just so much to unpack with the X-Men. A lot of ways you can make a great X-Men movie. The X-Men movie I've always wanted to see on the screen. I just have such a strong vision for these characters and for what this movie could possibly be. Speaking of that, I actually want to put my money where my mouth is and follow up this video with how I would pitch an X-Men movie, but that will come later. If you want updates, you can follow me on Twitter, and if you want a quick preview of what it will look like, you can follow me on Patreon. If you guys have dug this video and you feel like you've learned something, then feel free to like the video. It actually really helps the algorithm, really helps my videos, and yeah, I just love you if you do that. Now, of course, I have to thank my wonderful Illuminati Patreon members for keeping the lights on. You guys are the reason that this channel still exists. People like Daniel, Julian, Christos, a dude from Krypton, Screenspark, David, Draco, Lidge, Alexis, Lance, Holland, James, William, Rex, Carson, Brayden, Jai, Luis, Michael, Sol, and Ziggy. You guys are the reason that I get to have this channel. Believe me, this channel would not still be around if it weren't for you guys. I love you so much. I also just want to thank everyone else for liking the videos and keeping this thing going. I love you all. With that being said, have a lovely day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao.